Welcome to the Marketing Innovators Podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest, Neil Lang, who is the Director of Revenue at In-House Solutions. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Great. That's awesome. So I understand that although your role or your title is Director of Revenue, but you play a very prominent role in sales and marketing. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background and also what your current role is?
Yeah, sure. Great. Thank you. So what my role entails is all revenue generating activities within the company sort of fall into my scope of responsibility. So that's anything marketing related like demand generation, content, branding, website. But I'm also responsible for the sales org within the company. So all the full cycle sales reps and managers. And then finally, there's an ops component within my role. So things like revenue operations and process improvement within the system and system flow.
Wow. So a lot of different roles over there as far as bringing things together. And I know that you've been with the company for about 3 years. So how do you think that things have evolved over the past little while, especially during COVID?
Yeah, I mean we've really had to change up how we do things, obviously, and I think everybody has. Um, it's become very virtual, and customers actually, in a good way, are more accepting of living in a virtual world. Even if they were laggards 2 years ago and were sort of resisting the virtual world, they're in it now and they have to be in order to survive. So, although with that said, I think it's important to change the way you do things when it comes to marketing. I do see a lot of marketing doesn't seem to have changed as much as maybe it should, and sort of acknowledge that new world that we live in. So, at in-house, we've been very lucky. Our core value is agility, and at times we can struggle with it, but our messaging and addressing the current times and tailoring the messaging to the local area, is all that helped in these sort of interesting times that we're living in.
Yeah, no, it's been definitely some challenging times for businesses, and a lot of businesses have had to pivot. So before we get into those details and some of those challenges, I know you've had an interesting journey starting off as a salesperson and so forth. So tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, sure. So, I started as a lowly traveling salesperson, and I cut my teeth in sales. And wasn't a few years until my career that marketing sort of came into my purview. At that time, I was at Waste Management, and during that time at WM, I spent a lot of time talking to customers about contracts and customers that wanted to leave. They were sort of at their tail end of their agreement with us, and it was there I learned a lot of companies spend most of their money acquiring customers, and then retaining customers when they want to leave. So right away, I felt like, those 90% in the middle, need to get some additional value. So with that said, if your product and service is priced right and you're delivering well, it is a fair exchange for money for service kind of situation. And I'll probably get into this a little bit later, but, you know, I was thinking, how do you drive further value into existing customers easily? That was sort of my method of thinking. So, I created some value add programs and things like that I could probably touch on a little bit later. And then, I moved from the east here in Ontario to take a job opportunity with Waste Management out in the west, managing a larger team, major accounts team, and they handled major accounts in government. So that role did require quite a bit more marketing itself. Had multiple local sponsorships and requirements, as well as the multinational marketing campaign that you would have with a company the size of Waste Management, and it kind of taught me how to be a cog in the wheel, and I sat on a lot of marketing initiative committees with the company, helped shape some of their corporate marketing decisions going forward. But at that point, I then moved back to Ontario and I applied to a company called OpenText. So they were a high-tech company, massive. If you don't know them, I always say they're the biggest Canadian tech company you've never heard of. Um, and so I had a lot of people who worked for me back at WM in Ontario who now worked at OpenText. So many of them said, sort of you need to apply, great place to work. So I walked in with some great recommendations, which certainly helped. And this role was a bit different than what I was used to at Waste Management. It was managing a team in the marketing department called account development, or what some people would call SDRs. And I was now in head office in Waterloo rather than sort of a regional or field office. And I literally worked side by side with the field marketing manager every single day, building campaigns, strategies, follow up cadences, and whatnot. So OpenText definitely did it in an interesting way where their account development reps were within the marketing department and sort of came into the field marketing arm. So, I managed the customer experience team there. So those are platforms that were customer facing, and they focus on enhancing customer experience for our customers. So omni-channel experience with CCM solution, digital asset management, contact center solutions, anything that you would operate that would be customer facing. And then lastly, I moved over to in-house in a management role, with the idea to transition into the role that I'm in now. So that role focused on marketing, sales, revenue ops, process improvement, like I've already mentioned. Manage the marketing automation tool, a little bit of the accounting and billing software, and we've got about a total of 45 people and span all over Canada with our core products and worldwide for some supporting products. So we resell our flagship product, which is called Mastercam. And if you don't know what that is, it's a software, used to machine metal, plastic, aluminum, steel, and other materials to make anything really. We've got all kinds of customers from a one-man shop with no name making widgets to, massive automotive manufacturers and aerospace companies. We
Wow.
also sell metrology equipment, which is some pretty cool stuff, and the software that goes along to keep those sort of widgets and parts on spec. So just a quick example is we've got a hockey skate blade designer in the area who works with a couple of NHL players, and when they find a skate blade that they like, the skate blades, I guess, are a bit like fingerprints. So once they find one that they like, they take it to the designer and ask him to make, 100 more, so they will always have them. So
Mm.
the skate designer or skate blade designer will bring the skate blade to us, and we will reverse engineer it back into Mastercam, and then he will be able to machine the entire skate blade and provide it. So there are tons of cool stories like that, but it's quite an interesting world to be in with the manufacturing.
That is awesome. I mean, I noticed I was actually reading up on Mastercam here on the website, and it seems like a very interesting service. And I think that being one of the leaders in the world to be able to provide such kind of technology, so that's amazing. So when it comes to marketing, I mean, you mentioned a number of things when it came to acquiring customers, and I think as your evolution is from waste management and so forth to the current company. With in-house solutions, what have you learned that is actually really working well for the brand when it comes to customer acquisition?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there a lot of the roles that I've been in, it's been different, but the one message that kind of continues to resonate over and over is the value-based messaging or value-based marketing is single key driver in all three roles that I've been in. So with that said, I think each company I've been with, our marketing approach has sort of needed to adjust to the industry or the customer or prospect
Mm.
set. Um, and I hate not to give a direct answer here, but the company, uh, you know, that did the marketing, and each company did marketing in a different way. But I can tell you, we use marketing in each company to help, push forward to success. So
Mm.
I could probably give you a couple of examples in each one if you want.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that will help us, help me understand what you're trying, what target audience you're relating to, and then also how you're actually targeting them. So,
Yeah, sure. So at Waste Management, we I mentioned it already that there was
yeah.
like this sort of this layer of the multinational marketing campaign that we didn't have a whole lot of ability to steer. However, something that we did do local is local sponsorships and service as a sponsor. Those were huge for us. So there were some other grassroots things that we did, like Saving Trees awards and other things where people could display them in their lobbies. But the local sponsorships seem to have the biggest bang. Now, when I say local sponsorships, I don't mean sponsoring a little league baseball team. However, depending on your business, that may be what you're trying to accomplish, and that may work for you. But for us and our size, and the customers we were trying to attract, we were more, marketing towards large-sized events, NHL teams, and things like that, where we'd work with them to develop their marketing plan on how they would communicate their environmental footprint and how green they are. So back then, it sounds like a long time ago, but 10 years ago, being green was just taking off as mainstream, and a lot of companies didn't know how to communicate sort of their green deeds. So we would help them. We would help communicate it, what to say, the various calculations to show their diversion percentage, various initiatives directly at the venue. Then at renewal time for that salesperson, it made it a whole lot easier. And I'll say, when you can sponsor an event, get paid maybe some revenue for it, offer some in-kind service for it, get recognized as a sponsor, buy some tickets or a suite or box seats to the event, and then bring additional customers to that event, you're kind of getting a bit of a double whammy there. So I do know sometimes sponsorships are hard to calculate ROI, and we were very lucky to have a senior leadership team that believed it was valuable, mainly because we were usually able to keep large customers at renewal and at a higher price too.
Uh,
And then,
just a comment there.
go ahead,
It's
sir.
interesting you mentioned that, because you're absolutely right. It's hard to determine the ROI on sponsorships, but it's still a very valuable piece in marketing, because it's a way to also support local and to be known locally, and to show your work and essentially support local organizations with their work as well. So I think that's a really important piece that a lot of companies are used to be involved in before quite a bit, but now that everything is going digital, it's not as attractive as anymore, because again, because of the ROI factor. But I think it's still an important piece for building awareness and also brand acceptance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there'll be ebbs and flows with that
Yeah.
always, from now until the end of time. And funny that you say that, going digital. That's sort of the next phase of my marketing career at OpenText. It was more focused around digital marketing and be able to reach a broader audience, because we only focused on Fortune 500 companies in my department with revenue that was over $1 billion. So it's not the type of sale that is maybe as transactional or as personal as waste management. Selling $300,000 software versus a $40,000 environmental solution is certainly on a different scale. And it was, more traditional enterprise level marketing, drip campaigns, third party white papers, our own white papers, where we scored with Gardner, that type of stuff. So our messaging really had to be spot on. And we were reaching out to people who were getting pinged dozens of times a day from other companies. So we focused on trying to drive value in our messaging to stand out. So those are things like personalization, research, being authentic, were the main drive and value in that particular role. And we had success doing that.
Hmm. So now with in-house solutions, how is that transition? And ultimately, you mentioned a little bit about marketing automation as well. So are you using any platforms to track certain metrics to?
Yeah, again, beautiful, beautiful segue. So at in-house, we focus our attention, on our marketing on our current customers more than prospects. So it's not to say that we don't focus on prospects at all, but we're in a bit of a mature market, and a lot of our customers are growing. So we try to be in lockstep with those customers as they're growing, to allow us to be a little more consultative in nature. So with that said, it requires a big collaboration with sales, because it's their customers. So it's kind of tough to give each salesperson a marketing rep. It would be nice to do that, but obviously you can't. So we had to find some common ground, and allow to give some opinions on what type of messaging we want to be relaying to these customers. And we do use our marketing automation tool to do that. We attach campaigns on every single email that we send out on behalf of the sales rep, and we market, whether it's in-market promos or promos that we want to identify. But when I say promos, they're not always these sort of cost-driven promos. The one thing that again continues to shine through is value, and using our marketing automation tool to send out, whether it's content that we think would help the customer in their particular industry. So with not every message they get through the marketing automation tool is, hey, you want to buy this? Hey, you want to buy this? So being authentic, kind of bringing back from what we did at OpenText, is teeing up the sales rep to get that phone call to say, hey, thank you for sending me this particular promotion. But the customer also appreciates the last three emails that they got that they were marketing focused, but they weren't attempting to sell them something. So that's been a big factor for us, and we've been using Pardot specifically for the last 2 years doing that, and it's been a great success, and a very strong hit rate that we've been able to get through the tool.
So it seems that, from OpenText, you were focusing on mainly account-based marketing, where you're really focusing on certain accounts, and the shift here with in-house solutions is that you're really nurturing the current prospects. I'm assuming there's a lot that has to go with also tracking the activity of your current audience and current customers, so that you can actually reach them, at the right time when they're looking to make a decision.
Yeah, it's interesting because most of them being current customers, um, the thought or the messaging changes completely, or at least I think it does, and we really do focus on what is going to resonate with those customers. So, to give you an example, when we create a marketing campaign, we will usually create 3 or 4 different nurture campaigns that sales reps can drop their customers in. Those could be, hey, this customer is really hyper focused on price. Budget is tough to get, so we're going to drop them into you can save some money sort of drip nurture campaign. And then there's other ones that are more value driven. And I will say a lot of our sales reps really try to focus to get the customers in that bucket, because when you can get customers in that value driven bucket, price becomes a little more second nature. So we will drop as many customers, but the sales reps will get to pick which bucket they want their customers to fall into. So again, back to the personalization, it will allow the sales rep to personalize the message with the customer because they already know them. And that's the advantage they have from a marketing standpoint to our own existing customers, is they've talked to them, they've likely sold to them, they've renewed their maintenance. So it's a lot less, hey, I'm trying to get your attention, and a lot more, here's how I can make your business better.
So, because a lot of businesses have had to kind of rethink their marketing strategies during the pandemic, and in the past year and a half, how has that impacted your marketing efforts?
Yeah, I mean, so we used to do something simple, as if the marketing messaging wasn't resonating or wasn't working, we would simply just go knock on their door. And you don't quite have that opportunity any longer, right? So you definitely, I feel like we've had to get a lot more personalized and a lot more authentic, to go back again to the OpenText days. And our sales reps, because they are so lockstep with marketing here at In-House, they have, even in some cases, so I've talked about these buckets that we fall into with each promotion. We've had some sales reps say, these 5 customers, I don't want them at all. I want to type up a personal email to them. I know their dog's name. I know their kid's name. I want to be able to send them a very personalized message and keep them out of sort of the nurture campaign. And that kind of value that the customers see is something that has really changed. And even if it is continuing to still be digital, that's where I think we've made some strides and made some changes, because we just don't have the opportunity to be in front of people as much as we'd like to be
I think
anymore.
you actually raised a very important point, because often when companies think about marketing automation, they think everything is going to be automated and it's going to feel very robotic. It's not going to be very personalized, but it's quite the opposite. I mean, the purpose of marketing automation is to actually generate data that you can use to your advantage to reach your customer and prospects at the right time. And I think that it's wonderful where you are able to reach out to them in a very personal fashion because you have that insight, and to be able to do so, as you mentioned, having a salesperson reach out not through the system but also directly, and structuring your a very personalized email, it can have a profound impact. So it also goes to show that customers can also appreciate that when you actually reach them in that way or form, the customer really feels very valued, in your company. They don't just feel like a number; they feel valued, and they understand, okay, that you understand their needs. So I think that's absolutely amazing. So when it comes to kind of this transition during the COVID, do you think that it's been beneficial to the company in any way, or has it been just an adjustment that you've had to make to make sure that you're able to market effectively?
Yeah, I think you could look at it both ways, to be honest. I think there are some things that certainly have been more of a challenge. Um, and then there are some things that have been easier, or maybe saving on expenses. For at least my company, we haven't been in the office since March of 2020, so office expenses are down and all of that kind of stuff. Um, but as far as customers being in manufacturing, you do have, and I mentioned it before, it is a bit of a lagging industry from a technology standpoint. And don't get me wrong, there are manufacturers out there who are doing amazing things on the cutting edge of technology. But if you were to look at the middle of that bell curve, they're certainly lagging in the technology world. So it has forced a lot of customers to be more willing to have that Zoom call, more willing to hop on a phone and buy something virtually, versus, hey, I want you to come down here and sign a piece of paper. So, and obviously there's an expense to that, right? If it's 2 hours away, you get a drive, you're taking the whole day as a salesperson. So it's allowed the salespeople to be a little more efficient, and then therefore, has allowed the marketing department to get a little more time from those salespeople to drive that messaging that we want to drive, and to get more consensus on the messaging and the brand and that type of stuff, versus, okay, here are the five emails we're going to send to these select customers because that's what marketing has chosen to do. So I would say that that's definitely been a plus for the marketing department, is being able to get more collaboration from sales, and not because they're not busy, but they've got more time to dedicate to that kind of thing.
So, considering that there's been this transition and obviously a drastic change in customer behavior as well as the way that you sell, what are maybe some of the challenges that you foresee in the near future as things open up again? Do you see that things will be going back to normal, or do you feel that the behaviors will continue to be consistent with how we've been doing business over the past year?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's a,
Yeah.
it's a bit of $1 million question, and I'm not sure that anyone truly knows what even the next, what it's going to look like in 2 years from now. I will say I think there are some that are, call it, converted. They will continue to operate in a more digital world than they did before. And then, we do have some customers who are very much like, I can't wait for this to go back to the way it was because I enjoyed doing business that way. And that's fine. I think, again, back to being authentic and being personalized, we will treat those customers the way they want to be treated, which is, if you want to be marketed to in a in-person format, then we'll likely do it. I think what this will do for us is allow us to better understand our customer base, and not that we didn't know them before, but it will allow us to tailor everything that we do for our prospects and our customers, because we know them better now. And as they transition back, we will get to know what their new world is going to look like. Because I don't think anybody really has an answer yet as to
That's
what the
true.
new
Yes,
world will
yeah.
look like.
No, it's definitely we're stepping into the unknown here, but I think that we are going to be facing with a new normal that customer behaviors have shifted drastically, and again, it depends from industry to industry, and things seem to be working very efficiently now, even with remote work and so forth. So a lot of businesses are even contemplating whether going back to the office is even necessary or not, and depending on how you see that. So with regards to I think one important point that you really mentioned, and it's fascinating, is that you have majority of your sales with your current customers, which is great. I mean, you already have a relationship established with them, and you're able to nurture them to a point where you're continuing to have ongoing sales with the current client base, which leads me to believe that you have a long customer lifetime value, which is great. But what about customer acquisition? Because it still you still have to do the efforts to actually bring in new customers. So at this stage, like, I mean, how are you doing that, and what do you find is being, is being a more effective strategy than others?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I actually I just did a presentation a few weeks ago about this. The one key driver for us is education. So if we can back up from trying to acquire industrial customers, what we need to do is we spend a lot of time. We have a dedicated education sales rep, and they sell our product into schools. So that way, when you enroll in a advanced manufacturing diploma at a local college or a trade school, they will be using our software. So they come out of their school knowing our software, and then when they get to a place of business and it's their first job, we want them to in that interview to say, we use Mastercam, or I've only ever been trained using Mastercam. So a lot of our effort goes into promoting and getting into those educational institutions, because that's what drives the initial, or that baseline foundation for them using Mastercam in the respective shops. So we do still obviously spend a lot of time acquiring acquiring customers, but it's a big lift, right? If they're manufacturing widgets today and to the tune of 2,000 a day using X software, to pull that out, put in Mastercam, and train everybody how to use it effectively can take a lot of time. So oftentimes it's getting that one license in there, getting one person trained, and then sort of growing within the company at that point. And that's again why a lot of our sales come from our existing customers, because if they've got 30 machines running right now, they're not going to yank all 30 machines offline for a week and a half while we install our software. They just won't make any money for a week and a half, and that's not going to go over well. So that's why we spend a lot of time, one, with education, but two, within the acquisition of they seem like bite-sized pieces, but there's a strategy to that, because it's really, really tough to get a large sale, because they're not going to stop their
Mm.
business for a
Well, I mean,
week to
education is the best
let us
form of
in.
marketing. It's the best way to sell because you don't feel like the customer doesn't feel like they're being sold to, but they're basically being educated, and they learn the piece of software, and then they obviously go to the industry with your software's name and recommend that probably to the businesses that they're working for. Um, so you're getting them right, right at that stage when they're actually learning. Um, that is amazing. Um,
Yeah, it's been key, and it's been a big push for the last. I mean, the software is 35, 36 years old, so obviously it's iterated a lot of times, but they've done a great job over the 30 plus years, making sure that it is a
mm.
staple in those institutions of learning. So that way, yeah, the folks coming out,
Definitely. I mean, and
they
it's an
know the
industry
product.
leading software, so it's not like something that is not as known. But it's obviously, as you mentioned, it's a piece of technology that has been around for many decades, and it's trusted, it's credible. So you've established that brand presence already, and the industry knows it pretty well. So that's good, and that takes time. I mean, there's no shortcut method to achieving that. It takes time to actually get to that stage. Yeah. And that's true.
You want to
That's
do
true.
it as fast as possible.
A lot of companies would face a challenge to actually get to that stage, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely quite challenging to get to that level, but it's a great position to be in, definitely. Um, so where do you see are the maybe the biggest opportunities in the near future for in-house solutions?
Yeah, that's also a great question. Right now we've got a few business units that we're looking to grow. We've got some skill gaps in the marketplace with some of the skilled labor out there. So we feel from a consultative basis that we can help shore up some of those gaps for our customers. We aren't quite there yet. We're doing it in a smaller fashion, but we think we probably could scale that. And then we're looking to expand that business unit. I can't really chat much further on that. Um, but I think the question we always ask ourselves is with what's next with the 4.0 industrial revolution, right? We all know AI and industrial IoT will be huge. but will there be a standard platform or language? Will HoloLens technology take off? Will 3D printers or additive technology really become the standard? And probably lastly, robotics. Like how prevalent will robotics be in 20 to 30 years? I think a lot of people felt like in the 80s and 90s they were saying, oh, computers are going to take our jobs, and right now with robots, you hear robots are going to take our jobs, but we all still have jobs, and we're working alongside those particular technologies to enhance our roles. Now, will some folks lose jobs? Yes, but will they transition somewhere else? Likely. And again, it's the ebbs and flows of technology. And you always want to make sure on the right side of that ebb and flow, or that the right side of that cutting edge technology, to make sure that you're always evolving, and you don't get in a
Mm.
situation
Well, I
where
mean,
a
definitely
robot
AI is
does take your
taking
job.
over every industry, and there's always and there's some great applications for AI. Yes, there are people against it, but I think overall, as a society, we have to evolve. We have to actually, create new opportunities, and AI is the path to that, in my opinion. And I mean, obviously, there's all kinds of backlash as well with AI, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, and it can solve so many things that are mundane and repetitive. So I think there's definitely a place for AI, and it's good to know that I think that is definitely the step forward here in the next decade or so.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too far down a tangent, but there's some really cool companies here in Waterloo that are doing some really cool things with
Mm.
AI and ethical AI. Because you talk about AI and the scary parts of it, there is some scary components of it that it could be used more like against people rather than with people, and enhancing things. So I've listened to some really cool podcasts around ethical AI and making sure that the government finds a way to regulate it in a way where it's used for good, not for bad. So it's an interesting world for sure, and obviously it's still in its infancy, but we'll see what
That's true.
happens
Yeah.
in a few years with
So
it.
Neil, if you were to go back 5 or 10 years, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah. Last night's lottery numbers, I think. No, I'm just kidding. I think there's plenty. The longer I'm doing this, and the more I appreciate experience. And I don't mean experience as you must have 10 years experience to be successful. I do believe young marketers can do a great job if supported properly. It's taught me that there's more ways to skin a cat. So rather than have the way I want to see it, or I want to message it, it's understanding more of the whys and what do you think. And rather than giving direction to the most finite detail and moving on, it's having enough experience to know when to do that and when not to do that. So again, back to, this doesn't mean you need to be a 10-year plus marketing experience in order to be a successful marketer. That's not the case. But I do think your skills grow over time. And the older I get, the more I realize that, uh, you know, 15 years ago, I thought I knew everything, and I really didn't. And now I'm old enough to know that I don't know everything and I want to learn more. So I think experience creates that, and it does with marketing as well. More collaboration, more questions, more asking questions to make sure you nail that messaging the way that it was supposed to be nailed. You're on brand the way you want it to be on brand, because you asked the right questions, and you
Mm.
got the right answers
So
before
true,
you
and
started the
I think that
project.
as you evolve, I mean, hindsight is 2020. So you learn so much, and I think it's a matter of, I mean, you have to progress in life, and a lot of marketers that are listening to this podcast, some of them are starting out their journey in marketing, so it helps to know, you know, some expect success right within the first year, but it takes time. It takes time to actually build a skill set and be nurtured in this space to a point where you are able to now lead in this industry. So based on your experience and the challenges that you've overcome, if there was one big takeaway that you could give to our listeners, what would that be?
Yeah. Can I do two?
Oh, sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. I think one is, and I've touched on it more than once already, which is focus on bringing value to your prospect or customer. If you're priced right for your value, and you can properly portray that, your success rate will go up. And the secondly is don't be in silos. So I feel like saying that can be a little cliche, but it is true. Work closely with sales. I've had the luxury of being in both departments, leading both departments, and there can be some strong personalities at both sides of the table. But I will say, both teams always have the same goal in mind, which is to get more revenue and make customers happy. So, both departments don't always agree, but having open communication, sort of helpful and honest feedback, mutual respect, usually there can be a compromise. So that would be my two: is focus on bringing value and don't be in silos.
That's wonderful. So Neil, if somebody out there wants to reach you, where can people find you?
Yeah, I think the best place is probably LinkedIn. And that's the ideal place. The other thing is they can always email me. neil.lang@inhousesolutions.com is my email address, and reach out to me anytime with questions or comments.
That's wonderful. We'll actually include the details there in the podcast too. Neil, thank you so much for coming by today. I think you've shared some really great insights that I think are going to be really useful to the audience there. And I wish you the best of success in your position at In-House Solutions, and keep in touch.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.